we're going to start off with a nice segment here. It's called the opening drive. Roger's going to talk about some trade deadline stuff. Some guys you should be targeting, some guys you should be not targeting and trading away. Nak's going to keep us honest like he always does with the love-hates and see how we did last week, and hopefully we can do better this week. So that's it. And I'm just doing the intro because that's really all I'm good for. Let me just gonna.
And you do it well. You do it well. Don't worry.
I have my little 2.5 minutes of spotlight over here. But please, ladies and gentlemen, please continuing to listen, share, like, subscribe. Find us on all the social medias like we just said right now. I want to pass it on to Roger. He's going to get us going with the opening drive. He's going to talk us about some really interesting trade targets, both from the kind that you want to be looking towards if you're making the fantasy playoffs, and kinds you want to be trading away if you want to get some assets for later on. So here we go, Raj. Take it away.
Thank you, Fab.
Drive.
Opening drive.
Great team. Thank you, Fab. Week 11, trade deadline season. Actually, very important to note, if you're on a sleeper league, the default trade deadline is this weekend. And if you're on Yahoo, the default trade is November 22nd. So this is great timing for us to talk about some key trade targets that you should buy or sell. We're going to go maybe a bit more different, where we're going to talk about under the radar trade targets. And maybe some players who, look, you can't really drop, but maybe you could trade away and maybe just get away from that bandwagon because you can't really trust. So I'll start off with JJ McCarthy. So if you're struggling at QB, especially in Superflex, you have Bryce Young, you have Mariota, you have Davis Mills. Fab sounds like you, sounds a bit like me. McCarthy is a sneaky stash, and it's not necessarily for now, it's for later. You know, this is a time where you want to start thinking about the fantasy playoffs. And JJ McCarthy gets the worst ranked pass defense in Dallas. He gets the Giants, who, yes, they have a good pass rush, but still the pass defense has been struggling. And then Detroit as well, they've been able to be got. So they're all beatable through the air, and you're hopefully banking that the chemistry with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison hopefully starts clicking by then, because there's talent across the board, and there's been minuscule flashes by 9.
Minuscule.
I like this call a lot. Actually, I did try to trade for JJ McCarthy in Bush League last week. I tried to offer Garrett Wilson before his injury to Robbie. And it was a fair trade. Robbie just said no because he needed JJ, and that's fine, you know. But like I did try to get him. The guy I needed help at QB, and then you see the playoff schedule, which I know it's outside chance I make, but still, you got to be looking for the future. Yeah, I like this call.
Totally. Next, we have Alvin Kamara. He's the RB30 over the last 5 weeks. Not what you usually typically see from Alvin Kamara. He's been hitting benches everywhere. He's been on my bench in another league. I've seriously thought about cutting him. But he has a dream playoff scenario, week 15 through 17, Panthers, Jets, and Titans. Panthers have been better against the run, but still, the Jets and Titans, that's as bad as it gets against the run. I think he'd be a perfect throw-in for a trade. It's a low risk, high upside. And if he starts catching on with the PPR, which I think with Tyler Shuck, the offense has looked better. Has only been one game, but let's see if maybe the offense could start getting better. And I think he could be a really easy buy low candidate as a throw-in. Next up, we have Jakobi Meyers. Look, it's only been one game, but the first game against the Jags, he was already second in targets, and he had a 50% route share. BTJ is in the doghouse. We know there's been issues with him and Trevor Lawrence. Travis Hunter is going to be out for the season. That's really unfortunate. So he's going to be placed on IR. I think Meyers slides right into the kind of Trevor Lawrence short yardage game comfort zone that he's typically had. We've seen Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram have really good success with Trevor Lawrence. Seems like Lawrence doesn't have as much success with the kind of longer range wide receivers. Look what he did with Parker Washington this week as well, more of the short intermediate guy. So I think Jakobi Meyers, either you could trade for him or he might even be on the waiver wire as well. Next up, we have Jerry Jeudy. Again, think under the radar guys. We're not telling you to go and try to get Derrick Henry just because he's been struggling. Like, no one's going to trade for Derrick Henry, right? No one's going to try to trade Derrick Henry. Jerry Jeudy, I think, is a really good example. Quietly seeing a 23% target share throughout the year. Yes, the numbers haven't been good or bear fruit, but he just put up 6 for 78 last week against the Jets. He gets Chicago, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh in the fantasy playoffs. Kind of like a mid-tier schedule. But we know if the Browns offense, it could stay balanced, and we see a bit more signs from Dylan Gabriel, maybe even Shedeur Sanders comes on, I think he could be a nice flex starter. We saw last year with Jeudy, he really came on in the second half. He seems like more of a second half player, so that could be a one that could be a good throw in as well. Next up, you have Tua Tagovailoa. So this one is purely schedule based. Again, thinking of the fantasy playoffs, weeks 15 to 17, Steelers, Bengals, and Bucks. That Bengals matchup could be really, really juicy. That's a one that you kind of have to start regardless of almost who you have at QB. He'd be the perfect QB2 from a stash position. And I thought he looked really good last game, despite even the 2 interceptions. And he had a 4 touchdown game recently against the Falcons as well. So 2 of the last 3 games where Tua has looked more than competent. And it sounds like the team is starting to buy into Mike McDaniel. I have 2 honorable mentions. Aaron Jones, he's back healthy, 72% snap share, 69% rush share last game. Looks like the Jordan Mason era is kind of gone in terms of him being their focal point. He gets Dallas, the Giants, and the Lions in the playoffs. That's an RB2 floor with a potential RB1 ceiling. And I think this could be an interesting one. David Montgomery. Dan Campbell took over the play calling from Johnny Morton last game. We saw that paid dividends for Jameson Williams. It really paid dividends for David Montgomery. He saw a big snap share bump. He saw an even bigger bump in terms of long down and distance, where he's the better back in pass protection. I think you're going to see more of him from a rushing standpoint and potentially from a PPR standpoint as well.
So it was interesting. Campbell actually gave the running backs their drives. So he was alternating them every single possession. So no matter what it was, if Montgomery started the drive, he was there for first, second, and third down and the whole drive, unless they got down to the red zone and they could shift stuff around. But it was interesting to see, and it made it look a lot better rather than first and second down, he comes on third, or vice versa, and like interchanges them all the time. Yeah, he gave them their own drive.
That's great insight.
They did that last year too. I had Jahmyr Gibbs last year, and I was obviously following every single Detroit Lions game. They did a lot of that last year too, and at times it was frustrating. But Knack, to your point, like it did really balance out the offense, and it made both players play better.
Yeah.
How impressive is Dan Campbell? Like, you see him as this like meathead type, bite your kneecap off, and then he could take over play calling in a whim. That is extremely impressive for a CEO type coach.
Someone brought that up. I was reading on Twitter. It's like Dan Campbell's like, he's been an offensive mind for his entire NFL career. Like, he played tight end for like a bunch of teams. He's always been in the offense. He understands it a lot better than people think, and it's true, right? When you look at his body of work and all that, like it doesn't surprise me after you read all of that. But at the time, I was like you, and then like everybody else, I'm like, Dan Campbell is running plays. Like, does this really make sense? And it makes a lot of sense when you look at it.
Looks can be deceiving, right? Like, you think of all these offensive gurus, they're like, they look like nerds basically, and you see Dan Campbell like a hulking behemoth. It's like, oh, that guy has to be. Yeah, exactly. So, I'm curious, guys, if there was maybe one of these players in terms of kind of the potential players to buy, trade targets, who would you choose quickly?
Aaron Jones for me. Like, when he's healthy, and you saw what he did in that offense last year, when he's healthy, he's the guy. And if KOC wants him to play all the downs and all that stuff for as long as he's healthy, like, he's gonna bring you back a very, very nice return if you trade for him.
Aaron Jones always finishes the year really strong.
Yeah. I would probably go with David Montgomery. Like I said, I just loved what they did, how he took over the play calling and actually gave them their drives and gave them like, hey, this is you on this drive, like there's no subbing out. And so I think they could be Sonic and Knuckles again. In the late season push.
Love it. So now we're going to talk about players to trade away. So we're going to start with DK Metcalf. It's been a bit tough for DK Metcalf and the Steelers. I was the proponent that this connection wasn't necessarily going to be sustainable. Metcalf isn't necessarily the type of wide receiver that Rodgers typically flourishes with. I think he's been volatile. We were talking about it just previously before we went live, where they're not even targeting him. And then he's going to face a relatively tough defense, I would say. Some tough defenses, maybe not Miami, but Detroit and Cleveland in the fantasy playoffs. Cleveland is one that I find interesting. The pass rush that they get could really bother Aaron Rodgers to the point where I don't know if Metcalf is going to be able to come to fruition. So we'll see how that factors in. But I think Metcalf could be one where name brand you're able to get rid of. Next up, you have DJ Moore, 0 points last week, very inconsistent usage. Colston Loveland, Luther Burden, and Olamide Zacchaeus are all stealing routes from him. He had season lows across the board, whether it's from a snap share percentage of 62%, or only four targets, a season low as well in week 10. So obviously still name brand is still high, but I would try to cash out on that front. Next one, we have a very polarizing one in Bo Nix. I don't think the coach trusts him, and I don't think you should either, despite all the gaudy numbers. If you just look at the Raiders game, that was a game where you would expect the offense to really come out and show out. Everything's been short and safe. The downfield connections, whether it's with Cortland Sutton or even the ones we've hopefully tried to see with Troy Franklin, really haven't connected. I think the box scores also have been just mediocre outside of a few quarters where he's been able to kind of save his fantasy weeks. So gets pretty tough matchups in Green Bay and Kansas City in the fantasy playoffs. So I think this is one where you could sell based off what it looks like from a fantasy points perspective, but knowing that there's a bit of inconsistency. And we're going to stay on the quarterback as well there with Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love's another one where you should look to sell on this front. No Tucker Kraft. We've talked about the wide receivers. There's no reliable wide receiver whatsoever. And the stuff that Jordan Love was really good at the last 2.5 years or so, the big plays, have completely just been disappeared. He's looked awful the last 2 games, no touchdowns. We saw how he looked against the Eagles, and he gets a Denver defense and a pretty surging Ravens defense in the fantasy playoffs as well. And then finally, a player that I own quite a bit of, Woody Marks. Backfield's a bit of a mess. He looks to be the third down back for now, but his explosive run rate has been very, very low. 7% explosive run rate. That's on par with what Nick Chubb is doing. For a guy who kind of is supposed to be more explosive, quite a bit younger than Nick Chubb, he's not really providing the big plays for the Texans. And he's been stifled quite a bit at the line of scrimmage. He's had some really bad, inefficient games going forward. So I think if you were to kind of try to get rid of him, you'd see the points are there. You'd see the PPR as well as there. But I think he could be flipped for like an Alvin Kamara, and even I'd rather have a Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker III over Woody Marks. So any guys there that you guys are keying in on that should be trade candidates, or any other ones that you could think of?
I mean, I can definitely key in on Jordan Love. I think there's some name value there, and even Bo Nix if you want to. If you're concerned about the rest of season schedule and their playoff schedule, because Jordan Love, to me, I'm a little bit out on him, to be honest with you. Like he started off super hot, and now at least Bo Nix, you get that rushing upside.
Yeah,
you don't really get that with Jordan Love, and I just don't think that the ceiling is as high as everyone thought it was going to be with him. Yeah, those are the 2 guys that if I have them on my team, I'm looking to trade.
You might also be able to get a DK Metcalf pretty cheap right now. And oddly enough, I know you mentioned the Browns. That was his second best performance of the year early on, and he saw 9 targets in that game, 4 for 95 and a touchdown. And based on his last few performances, he could go for pretty cheap down the stretch. And I don't know, the wide receivers right now on the wire is very, very gloom.
I just think of like our buddy Guido, where he's like he's such a hard player to start on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, he is
for sure.
Very inconsistent. That's someone I wouldn't want to have to deal with that again, like going forward.
DJ Moore, I won't be surprised if you even see him on your waiver wire in some leagues.
I was going to bench him this week, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. had an emergency appendectomy, so I'm unfortunately going to have to start DJ Moore again. But so that's it for our Week 11 opening drive. So that was some trade targets. Again, please have a look at your fantasy league settings, whether you're on Yahoo, Sleeper, ESPN, for those who use that, or even NFL Network. Fab, Nak, let's get into love-hate Week 11 and talk about which of these guys we're actually going to start and actually going to get some wins from.
Love-hate.